I'm Mark Vernarelli, and welcome to Inside Harford County, a program where we sit down with our community leaders and discuss the issues important to the citizens of Harford County. 2026 Maryland General Assembly session is now underway. It brings lawmakers from every corner of the state to Annapolis to craft new legislation and finalize the new budget, decisions that will shape Harford County and communities all over Maryland. Joining us to break down what's ahead, Delegate Teresa Reilly, chair of the Harford County House Delegation, and Harford County Executive Bob Cassilly. Thank you both for being here. We're giving you a half an hour break from Annapolis today, and I'm sure you appreciate that because it's a busy time. Mr. Cassilly,
Good morning,
you probably, it's great to see you. I hope the family's doing well.
Thank you.
And you probably kind of enjoy being on the outside of the legislature because you did the Senate before you were county executive. What should people know about the Maryland State Legislature?
Yeah, so the General Assembly is very impactful for what we do. They meet for 90 days every year, beginning in January through April. You got 47 senators and 141 delegates that are all represent the entire state. And they deal with many important issues. The state budget for funding for our schools, our roads, our public safety. They deal with laws on the criminal justice system, domestic laws, business laws that set the business climate. Big ones for us, funding for schools and roads. And the folks need to appreciate that these laws, these state laws, they supersede what we do at the local level. So that's pretty impactful.
And the legislature is roughly modeled on the federal government, how the federal government operates with the Senate and the House, correct?
Well, I guess one would say it's actually the opposite because the state government existed before the federal government.
Very good point.
But it does closely align, you're right, with the Senate and the two senators to a district would be a senator and 3 delegates. And in Harford County, you have 3 senators. One of them, Mary James, only represents Harford County, but Senator Gallion represents Harford and a little bit of Cecil, and Senator Jennings represents Harford and a little bit of Baltimore County. And then we've got 6 delegates who only 6 delegates, but some of those, like Delegate Reilly, Delegate Griffith, they represent mostly Harford, but some of Cecil. Mm-hmm. And then others that represent, most of the rest of us, I guess, all represent just Harford County. So the county borders don't constrain these folks. These are state maps, not county maps.
And Delegate Reilly, you are the chair of the House Delegation. What does that mean in layman's terms, and what is your main role in that capacity?
Well, actually, so I was elected in the gubernatorial election of 2014, so my first session was 2015. When I first got elected in 2015, I went in as the vice chair. And then 2 years later, with a contested chairmanship race, I went in and became the chair, and I've been chair ever since. So like, the county executive Cassilly has said, so during our interim, because I know we're going to be talking about what's going on now with redistricting, we actually had a redistricting process in 2022. So when I first went into the legislature, we had 2 additional delegates. So now in 2022, with that Eastern Shore lost population, so things moved, towards Baltimore County. So now 2 of our delegates are now just serving Baltimore County. So the senator, senator was my senator. The county executive, he was there, so he understands. But it's important to know that Harford County does have 3 districts, and they are split up between, the center and the delegates. And now we have 3 senators, 6 delegates, and important, I think, within this part of the questioning is to understand that we are a bipartisan delegation. We don't have all Republicans and we don't have all delegates. So it is a combination of both, so it is a bipartisan delegation.
It helps everybody if you work together, of course.
Absolutely.
Now, there's new leadership in Annapolis this year. How does that impact your work or the citizens of Harford County? New leadership in both chambers, right?
Yes, absolutely. So the new leadership, we actually, for the House, and they had to call also the Senate in, because whenever you call a special session, you also have to deal with the veto bills that the governor had vetoed during the last session. So both the House and the Senate were called in December, I think it was the 16th of 2025, and pretty much the Democratic caucus pretty much picked the candidate because they are the supermajority. and we just show up and, you know, cast our vote. But they pretty much had decided by the time we went there that it was going to be, at the time, chair of HGO, which was the committee I was on, so I know her very well, Jocelyn Pennell-Melnick. So she is now the current speaker. She is an immigrant from the Dominican Republic, so she's very passionate about certain things, and immigration is one of those. You know, healthcare basically for all, and we can just, you know, go on down the list. So yes, she is there, and she made a lot of structural changes. We had, before her, we had 6 standing committees. Now we have 7. And each one of those standing committees had only 4 subcommittees. So now we have 7 subcommittees. So what that has done is actually allowed a lot of additional Democrats to have chairmanships and sub-chairmanships, and pretty much every Democrat has a title somewhere along the line, which is kind of funny. But the bad part in doing that is that it really has moved, I think, the balance far progressive towards socialism, and really seeing within the first couple days, already seen how the minority party has basically been shut out in a lot of situations. So,
Mr. Cassilly, we talked about redistricting briefly.
Yeah.
That's a huge issue in
Sure.
this session. What is it, for the folks who are not really paying attention to it or don't understand why the average Joe or Jane is affected by that, how do you describe the redistricting process?
So the redistricting we're talking about right now is at the federal maps. Of course, we have state maps, we even have county level maps, but the only ones that are being discussed now is redistricting for the federal maps. And the idea of redistricting is that as the population grows, you have to readjust the maps to make sure that the districts are the same size. So one district isn't representing more than another district, give them more power. Well, this time around, normally we wouldn't be redistricting in this year. There's a national call, particularly on the Democrat Party side, to call for a national redistricting. And Maryland governor has responded to that call, and he has now submitted a proposed map to the General Assembly. And the map is interesting because if you look at Maryland's population, we're 3/4 Democrat, 1/4 Republican. So we have eight members in the House of Representatives. So if you just go by the simple math, we should have 6 Democrats and 2 Republicans. But we only have 1 Republican because the current districts are drawn to disfavor the Republicans and squeeze them out and give 7 to the Democrats. Now the call is for an additional, another redistricting. And the only reason for doing that can possibly be is that you want to eliminate the sole Democrat, or so the sole Republican. So this is, it's a troublesome thing because you'll have the 1/4 of the state being Republican would have no representation in Congress, and the Democrats would all become all the Congress folks would become Democrats. So the map itself has to be approved by the General Assembly. That map, the governor's proposed map, has already passed the House of Representatives, the House of Delegates in Annapolis, and has now come over to the Senate. It's not moving in the Senate. The Senate, because the Democrat caucus in the Senate apparently doesn't want it to move, so it's just sitting there. So it's interesting to watch the politics. The Republicans are on the side watching the games because they don't have the numbers. It's a super Democrat majority. So the Republicans are watching this unfold while the Democrats are at odds between the House and the Senate and the governor in the Senate. But it doesn't seem as of today that bill is going to move further through because the Democrats and the Senate leadership say, no, this isn't a good idea. We don't want to take all the Republicans out. We want to be a little bit more fair about this and not just say let's drive all the Republicans out of Congress. Let's draw a map that's more fair. So it's nice to see a little bipartisan there and some folks being a little more altruistic. And let's just redistrict for the right reasons, which is to adjust for population and not to drive one party completely off the map.
And Delegate Reilly, what's the public testimony been like? What are the citizens? You represent the citizens, not yourself, obviously. So what are the citizens testifying in Annapolis? What are they saying about it?
Excellent question, Mark. Actually, I'm on the executive rules. I was on the Rules Committee where this particular bill was actually heard and had the testimony. The testimony was like 76% unfavorable. We had a total of 406 people that were unfavorable and 126 unfavorable, just to kind of give you the, the percentage there. So it was just really unfortunate, and this is a time when the House members are really grateful for the Senate side, and hopefully that President Ferguson will hold true. Some of his comments in the past were already okay. We're saying we're going to take it to the courts, and he actually made a comment. Well, even though it may or may not be unconstitutional, but in his opinion, the objective of it and the looks of it is unconstitutional. And as we were hearing the testimony, during the hearings, it was pretty incredible. And like I had, talked briefly to you earlier, I mean, the rhetoric that was going on was all hatred and all political virtue signaling. That's all it was. It really doesn't have to do with voting and redistricting. It's all about eliminating like 1 million Republican voices. My district serves Harford County and Cecil County and parts of the Eastern Shore. I'm on all 3 delegations. And it affects all 3 of those areas 100%. And it's just really unfair that
So
we're
what
dealing
happens
with
now
this.
is if it doesn't move in the Senate, it dies. Is that correct?
Correct. So right now it's passed the House, as the county executive mentioned, and it's over in the Rules Committee of the Senate. So, and it's sitting there. And the Rules Committee in both houses, it's basically your leadership. So he has, a handle of his folks and his members. So I'm hoping and I'm thinking that, it should stay dead.
Mr. Cassilly, sometimes you have local laws and you have the state legislature passing laws. Sometimes the legislation overrides the local laws. Can you give us an example of how that has happened in Harford County?
Sure. Well, and this is a really important topic because since the founding of the state, there's always been a respect at the state level that we'll do some things would be done better at the state level and other things at the local level. So let the locals manage the local jurisdictions. What we've seen over the last 10 years is really a pretty dramatic shift where the state level is coming in and trying to assert more and more control over the individual counties. And we see this, for example, a good example is last year on solar fields, where the state turned and passed a law that I must allow solar fields on our prime agricultural land. Now the county allows solar, but we've tried to protect our best farmland and said, well, you can put it on this rocky soil, you can put it over places that aren't farmable. But the General Assembly said, no, you've got to give up some of your best farmland for this. And so we pushed back hard because it makes no sense. We said, why don't we put it on the land that's not farmable? And I know Delegate Reilly and I both opposed that. This year, the governor's back pushing to override our zoning authority. So we have zoning, and the county does all the zoning. We say this area is for farms, this area is for single-family homes, this area is for high-density residential, this is townhomes, and we have these various zoning categories. Well, the state's now coming in and saying, no, we're going to obliterate that. We're going to tell you that over here where you have single-family homes, you also have to allow townhomes and apartments, and just mixing up all those zoning categories. So that's unfortunate. We're opposing that. We think that it's important as you deal with the high-density housing, which typically requires bus lines and more schools. We try to align those with our existing capabilities. And when you ignore the zoning, now suddenly we're having to expand bus lines, which are very expensive, further up into the rural areas because now you build apartments in the rural areas, and now you've built apartments where you had no schools. Now I have to either buy a whole lot more buses to move people from the houses over to where the schools are, or build more schools. Neither of which is a good thing. So we're taking, the General Assembly doesn't look at it holistically and say, hey, when you build apartments, what else does that mean? It doesn't just mean buying houses. It means you have to provide the houses, the schools, the parks and recreation, the senior centers, the bus lines, all of that stuff. They look at we just want houses. All right, well, it takes the logic out of that. So we're trying to work together to maintain some of this local control, but it's very difficult because the General Assembly is very just looking at this as one issue. We want more houses, and so we're going to override your zoning authority.
Delegate Reilly, ICE is a huge issue, immigrations and customs enforcement nationwide. Where do we stand now on legislation that would allow or disallow law enforcement agencies locally to participate with ICE?
Yes, actually, to piggyback on, the state taking over local control, this is a perfect example. What they have done was to override local authority and local jurisdictions to actually, do their program. So Cecil does it, which I'm, member of and legislator, and also Harford has had a 287G program. And it's kind of shameful of what they did on the House floor and even through the hearing. And now I'm not on judiciary, but apparently it pretty much was the same on the floor of how they misled what our current program actually does. And they actually kind of, went again and kind of painted it with a large brush and was looking at what's going on at the riots in Minnesota. It has nothing to do with it. What they have done was eliminated all contracts that law enforcement and corrections have with our federal immigration agencies. And it's a shame because it doesn't make our neighborhoods safer, it makes us less safe. And that was a lot of the arguments that we had. We, as a minority party, we had several amendments that we tried to address to hopefully keep the program in place because it really does work. And some of those, I'll just mention some of them. It is crazy that they did not go for some of these. So by eliminating the 287G to individuals charged with continuing crimes of violence. Another one, individuals charged with sexual offenses or sexual abuse of a minor, individuals charged with child abuse in the first degree. So when you hear these amendments, and again, they all were rejected. So when you look at that, I'm sitting back there and I can't really comprehend how these members can actually agree to say, okay, let's not have this program and don't allow ICE to come in and, detain these criminals and just let them out into the public. So it was kind of, disheartening, but we did put up like I said, a good argument. But unfortunately, the status of the bill now, it has voted and passed both chambers. The Senate vote was 32-12 and the House 99-40. So it will actually go into effect as soon as the governor signs it, which we feel that he said he will. So
another huge issue that affects everybody, Republican, Democrat, Independent, whoever, energy prices. Is there legislation out there, your legislation out there, to try to do something to help the common man and woman, so to speak?
Yeah, well, in the grand scheme of things, Maryland really has a, undeniable energy crisis. Our energy bills are skyrocketing, and the gall of the legislature. So first we had the redistricting, okay, then we had the 287G, and then we had an energy bill, HB1, that was supposed to be and touted as this great fix to skyrocketing bills, when all in totality, HB1 does absolutely nothing. The savings, according to a lot of testimony, the savings and on the physical note is somewhere from like $1.70 to 80 cents. So, per month on somebody's bill. So again, they continue to treat energy in a way that doesn't really help our citizens. So going back real quick, we're talking about energy, going back to the restructuring process, this just goes to show you how the legislature thinks about energy. It used to be on it used to be on Economic Matters Committee, to where it does. It's a huge economic drive, energy. It deals with businesses. It deals with, fighting, making buses all electric. And it affects the economy like 100%. They totally moved energy out of economic matters and put it into environment and transportation. They are not going to change their ways. They're going to continue with green energy. And we know for a fact that green energy of solar and wind does not sustain our electric grid, and it is not reliable. So we're talking about between BG&E with this cold weather, BG&E, the PJM interconnection agency that handles the flow of our electric on the grid. They all said, okay, we need more generation. We buy most of our energy from other states. Pennsylvania's starting to get really upset that we're buying 40% of their electric off the grid. So that may come to a halt eventually. So we need to, take matters in our own hand and generate our own electric. So last year I had a bill. This year I have a bill in similar. Basically is what it does. It allows private industry, what is currently allowed, private industry, but also the energy or utility companies also, because they have the investment, they have the money. They can do it quicker and faster, and we need it yesterday. So that's basically what it does.
Mr. Cassilly, how about the effect of the state budget on the county budget? Certainly, they're hand in hand.
Yeah.
And let's take, for example, schools. Let's just take one area, schools. Are schools affected by what the state legislature does?
So appreciate this. The state collects all of our taxes, property taxes, income taxes. They collect all that, and then they give the counties back a piece that's determined by law. Traditionally, the state has used their piece. They keep some and give us some. They've used their piece to do things like highways and schools, two big areas. But what's happened is the state has taken on, expanded their social welfare expenditures. That money that they're spending on social welfare is being pulled from schools, their contribution to schools and highways. So what we're finding is that as the state continues to run this big structural deficit with expanding their social welfare expenditures, they're shifting to the counties more and more and more of what they used to pay for on schools. So they're not funding what they used to in school construction. They pulled way back on that in busing, teachers and pensions. So they keep increasing what we're having to pay out of our piece of the tax money that normally that they would pay. And on the education side, the state said, well, counties, you have to raise the teacher starting salaries to $60,000. But they didn't, however, provide any money into how this would impact special education and transportation, extracurricular activities. So they're putting a lot more responsibilities on the education system, but not the funding to back that up. So it's up to the counties now to pick all that up, and we have to make up the difference. Last year, the state, to jettison some of their own responsibility onto us, said to Harford County, you're going to have to pick up $3.5 million more from the teacher's pension that the state would usually pay for. So it's really jettisoning or transferring responsibility from the state to the counties. And I turn to the state and say, you're not fixing the problem because you have a structural deficit. And the way to fix that is to reduce your expenditures. And instead of reducing their expenditures, they're simply handing more of responsibility to the counties. But it's the same taxpayers. So you add on more social welfare expenditures and keep everything else the same. And then to make your budget balance, you say to the counties, well, you pay for highways, you pay for schools. And that's been particularly damaging to us. I know that the state at one point provided us with about 15% of the highway user revenue, which is your gas tax. But they pulled back on that, and now we're down 1 or 2% of your gas money. Well, that's devastating because the highway user revenue, that's your gas tax, that's supposed to go back and help you to fix up your roads and to help pay for county roads. But if you're pulling the money out of the funding that we're supposed to be getting for that, it's got to come. I can't not fix the county roads. I'll pull out of the general fund instead of out of the dedicated fund of the highway use revenue. These are some of those, just the impacts that we're seeing as the state budget balloons. They're not willing to make the necessary cuts to balance it, and their only trick they got left is to dump more responsibility on the counties and pretend that we've got extra money, which we don't. And so we're either having to cut county services or raise taxes, and neither one of those is a good fit.
Delegate Reilly, we have millions of issues to talk about. We won't even get into like juvenile justice and some of the other things, but how do people contact your office if they have concerns about any of these issues? You're certainly a year-round legislator, so can people contact you year-round, and how do they do that?
Oh, absolutely. Of course, everything is on the website, but also my office. I do have staff, in the office during the interim as well. Again, I'm only in Annapolis for the 90 days, but I'm here back in the county during the interim, and from going to different events or going to whether it's an Eagle Scout or so on and so forth. So we are very, very active. I'm always available. Delegate Teresa Reilly at 6 Blaine Street in Annapolis. Phone number 410-841-3278, and I will get back to you.
And Mr. Cassilly, we can't take for granted that everybody knows who his or her delegate or senator is. How do they find that out?
Yeah. So it's pretty convenient. You can go on the Maryland General Assembly website and click on the Members tab, and you find my representative, and you put your address in. It'll tell you exactly who your delegate is, who your state senator is, and you can and give you the contact information, their office phone number, their office email address, so you can contact folks. If you have other questions, please feel free to contact my office at citizensaffairs@harfordcountymd.gov. Most important thing is, whether you reach out to this General Assembly or to my office, folks need to stay engaged. People need to let the General Assembly know that what you're doing is important, and you need they need to hear from what the citizens are thinking.
Delegate Reilly, what about working together? You talked about you really have to work together in the legislature. You have any thoughts on how the legislators could work together better to help serve the citizens?
Yes. First of all, you have to work across the aisle. And like I said, our delegation is bipartisan. There's a lot of coordination, a lot of work that you have to do. Our delegation also works a little bit differently from other delegations, to where our House and Senate actually vote differently. So it's even more coordination that you have to do. A lot of our delegates, myself, and I know my co-delegate, we've worked with Democratic cross-filers, which certainly helps. We in the legislature, we get along better like off the floor opposed to on the floor.
Teamwork makes the dream work, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Well, we could go on and on with all these topics, but it's a fascinating thing to look at the legislature. I wish you the best of luck with the rest of the session. Thank you, sir, for being with us again. Absolutely. And thank you all for watching Inside Harford County, airing exclusively on Harford TV. Please join us again next month. On behalf of all the crew here, I'm Mark Vernarelli. Thanks for watching.